So as the channel grows and I continue doing these little monthly wrap-ups to give you guys like recommendations on what to watch, what to listen to, I know that at a certain point I'm going to be getting sponsorships, and I also know I'm bound to get that one person who's never commented before going, "You're a sellout!" And I mean, if I am, I decided to do it in a way where I can offer you guys something in the process. So Lego sent me this like huge box, and in this box was a couple of Lego Star Wars not even memorabilia, I guess, well, Star Wars Legos. I know some people don't really like the movie, but they did give me the movie, and the whole point was that they gave me 2 sets, and I believe it comes with like Kylo Ren. I think I opened up one of them. It's got a little Kylo Ren in there. I said, yeah, Kylo Ren in there, and pretty much they gave me 2 so I can give away, and these are supposed to be like unreleased type things. They also gave me this Tron box, so it's like, boom, it's this little Tron box right there. I opened it up, and bro, I didn't even know this thing lit up. Literally, I'm not even gonna lie, at a certain point, I thought they were just gonna send me, like, oh, something that ticked. But this is crazy. I had no idea that this thing actually lit up. But this, as well, with a little note that they sent me, comes with this Tron Legacy limited edition thing. The gist being that they gave me these sets so I can give it away for you guys. So, I know that I don't really do giveaways, but I think Emergency Awesome says you're supposed to, like, subscribe, like, share the video. All I care is that you really just leave a comment down below. Pretty much give me your best explanation for why you love a Star Wars character. If it's the funniest, if it's the most deep, dramatic thing possible, I'm going to pick the best one, and I'll be sending these things out to you guys thanks to Legos. But anyways, the monthly wrap-up. If you guys don't know, I've done one for January, I've done one for February. Pretty much, I watch a lot of movies. I don't always cover them all on the channel because, you know, not every movie has something profound that I have to say about it. But I do like doing the wrap-up where I go through everything from my least favorite to the best that I consider my must-watches of the month. And I cover the worst ones that I may not like because, as I always say, even though I don't like it, it may end up being your favorite movie of the year. Some of you have noted that I also use transition songs throughout the video, and those are like technically my top picks, but I also decided to add a playlist down below for those of you who are interested in my music decisions, my music likes and stuff for my most recent picks. So I have the playlist down below. Some of you hate the music picks. That's completely fine. You could ignore that, but that'll be down below along with the entire list ranked, time-stamped, as well as videos that I may have made for it, because a lot of people always ask, hey, you know, I know this is a quick rundown thing, but can you expand on some thoughts? You don't always make an A to Z video, but some of you don't know that I actually have a second channel, and there's actually a funny story with that. So I do have a second channel called Let Me Explain, and I pretty much run down through every movie that I watch. It's like a movie diary. But I made a joke once, because some people, I haven't really connected the channel. Some of you, this is the first time you're hearing about it. Some people have found it, and I made like a little joke just saying it was my brother. Some people took that seriously. There was one person in particular who continues to say they want to unring my notifications because they don't like my videos. Hey, that's fine. But they said this. Anyway, check out his twin bros channel, Let Me Explain. They sound alike, but Arturo here is just annoying. But I still watch most of his vids. Also, he never shouts out his twin, who has like 3K subs. I think he mentioned him twice. His bro, though, is always like, check out ATZ. I don't know. I'm having sibling issues right now. There is a clear difference in the way that the channels like approach reviewing a movie, but I'm gonna stick with it. You can go check out my brother's channel. Pretty much the reason he made it is because it's going through a whole movie diary of everything that he's watching. We're intellectuals over here. We want to break down what we can learn from a movie. Over there, it's pretty much part review, part recap, part commentary, and it's just answering that question that we were getting a lot of, which is, hey, have you seen this movie? Nah, I'm not gonna watch it. Explain it to me. So like Mike's super short show, you now know, so let's get into the list of March. Alright, so all of these movies are pretty much the ones that stream it. If it's free on Netflix, if you're bumming it, Amazon Prime, any of those things where you do not need to leave the house, but if you want to give it a chance to watch it, go ahead. The first one I have is Dear Dictator. It's pretty much about this girl pen paling a dictator who then comes and stays with her, and some people have actually told me that there's a true story that kind of goes with this, of a girl who was actually, it was actually a woman who was a pen pal to this dictator, and they like started a friendship. This ain't like that at all. It's got Mila Kunis Jr. over here, and I don't know what Michael Caine is doing.
No, I'm Latino in spirit.
I get that the point of the movie is satire, but like other things, people forget that sometimes satire needs to make a point, or at least be funny. The Strangers Pray at Night is not a movie that I liked at all, right? I love every single genre, but this one for me, it's not that I hate horror films. I love horror films, and I'll even give a shout out to my boy Lee Drum Dums. If you don't follow him, go tell him that Art sent you. He adored this movie, and he is a horror fanatic. I enjoy horror films. He loved it. I didn't. There's a difference there, but for me, I didn't like this movie, mainly because of the fact that I like watching out if movies are like shelved. Like literally they are made and they do not release them, and I wonder why. Of course, I'm still gonna go watch it and give it the chance, but when there are scenes when this girl literally gets baited by a jack-in-the-box, when this movie has Christina Hendricks just willingly getting stabbed, like not even trying to bat the person away, just stands there so she can get shanked, when this movie has like 25 different endings, it's not for me, and I'll still give it a little bit of credit that I did like the pool scene. I thought that was pretty cool, and the way that they paid homage to the 80s slashers. I think the ending, as people explained, that they saw it from the perspective of it being kind of traumatic and the trauma that goes with it, I'll give them that. But other than that, I personally can't recommend the movie.
Hell of a day, ain't it? Hell of a day.
Hurricane Heist is like the Fast and the Furious if it was mixed in with like Twister. These people decide to do a heist during a hurricane, and it is as dumb and kind of fun as you would imagine it to be. The trailer, if you check it out, the trailer is like edited on Microsoft Word. It looks really bad. It's not that the movie's any better, but it is definitely dumb fun. If you have like a big screen at home and this is streaming on Netflix, that's where I would watch it.
Quiero Taco Bell, huh?
I'm usually never offended by bad jokes. Like, it rarely happens. I'm not offended by this one either. What does offend me is when they're not funny. Like, a joke needs to be funny. That offends me. It's not that this movie is completely horrible. It's just not really good in any way, shape, or form. It's got a stacked cast. It's by the Edgerton brothers. Like, Joel Edgerton is in it, but his brother directs the movie, and I guess that's how he had pulled to get everyone together, and he wanted to make this thing. You forget it immediately as the credits roll. There was actually 2 Gnome movies that came out. I didn't see Gnome alone, left that alone, but I did see Sherlock Gnomes, and I made a video about how there's a conspiracy to it. Half of the cringy, ugly things that I know is meant to bait kids, it's not in the trailer, or it's not in the movie. So when you watch the movie, it kind of gives you this little thing of convincing you that, hey, that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And then it makes you like want to give it no. It is trying to manipulate you by giving you a very bad trailer, so then you give the movie more credit. Absolutely not. The twist is okay though, I guess.
Wasn't it?
I find it interesting because I do like the Workaholics dudes, but I think they're the worst part of this movie. I am a huge fan of Popstar. I don't know how many of you saw that movie, but I adore that movie because of the way it meta deals with the 3 guys' relationships, The Lonely Island, how one of them is the most famous, the other guy is the behind the scenes, the director, the most creative one, and then like the writer, no one pays attention to that person. He's like out there in the woods practically, and I love how they made a movie out of that, their actual relationship, and put it on screen. It's kind of like they tried doing that with this one, because one of them is the most famous, the other one is literally the director, and then no one pays attention to that third guy almost, but it's just not as good. I think that the best part of the movie is probably the cameos that they have. It's a Netflix release, so again, watch it on Netflix. But I will say this guy right here, he has the funniest bit in the movie, and he also has one of the funniest bits in an upcoming movie that I highly recommend. At this point, I'm going to go through a bunch, because there's like a lot of movies that you see, and you'll get what I'm talking about. Furlough is pretty much this movie of a road trip between a con and Tessa Thompson, who's the cop. That's all I can say if you like that. The Forgiven is a murderer seeking redemption from an archbishop. All I can say is, bro, what is up with that nose? A Deadly View is pretty much Rear Window, or if you're more of a millennial, Disturbia. It's pretty much that, but with a pregnant woman. And it's practically the story of Solomon and the babies, if you know that story. Imagine that as a Lifetime movie, but it's not a Lifetime. It got released on VOD. Happy Anniversary is that Netflix movie that you think it's going to give you certain feels. I don't know what it's been with Netflix and their romantic movies. They're just so forgettable to me. I would highly recommend Easy. It's a show that I've been pushing, and I'm going to push it even more. I really like Easy, and it does what all of these movies are supposed to do, but better as a series. 7 Days in Entebbe, Anemone. It's based off a true story of this hijacking that happened, but all I'll say, and this is like what most of people have been talking about, well, two things. One, Daniel Bro needs to get better roles. Like they keep giving him these terrible roles. Even when he was in Marvel, he had like the most boring role. I know that was the purpose of the role in Civil War, but he had the most boring role. And this dude has so much potential. He speaks like 47,000 languages. He was fantastic in Rush. Now he's in this movie where the ending decided to be so artsy that there was a hijacking and a dance number happening at the same time. And when a dancer fell, that meant someone... I like the attempt, but it didn't work. Allure is Call Me By Your Name, but like without the consent. If you watch Westworld and you think that she's crazy in that show, she is completely insane in this movie, in where she pretty much just starts a relationship with this girl who's way younger than her, like not even 17, not even the legal age. She's like 16 or 15, and things get a little bit crazy. It's interesting for a little bit. Same thing with Josie, which pretty much has Sansa actually showing emotion. And it's one of those movies that you're like treading along with it. You're like, okay, it's just like we're in this hick little town right here. And it isn't until the end of the movie that you go, oh, okay, so there's a plan with this. And it's again, interesting, but more of a stream it than anything else. Imitation Girl, I thought, had one of the most intriguing concepts, because it's this alien that lands on Earth. It's like in the middle of the desert. And this like, the form hovers over this magazine, so then it becomes the woman on the magazine. So now there's two of them, and at a certain point you're wondering if they're going to interact. It starts off super intriguing. It meddles out a bit because it is an indie film, but whenever it does have the chance to do something with its special effects, I think it does it well. And it ends at a place where I know a lot of people are going to find it boring, but for those of you who saw Annihilation, it's got that sense of that third act of Annihilation, if you know what I'm talking about. Like Me is a movie that I wanted to scope out, mainly because I like ranging the types of movies that I watch, and this one I thought was super intriguing with its visuals. And I would practically say it's like if Harmony Korine directed his version of American Psycho, this is what you would get. It's super crazy. It's all over the place. The visuals at a certain point just are way too in your face, in my opinion, and the story kind of meddles out as well. But it's practically the story of this girl who is a psychopath, goes around different people in town and just tortures them or manipulates them, scares them in a sense, records it and posts it online, and gets a following with people who commentate. If that's your cup of tea, if you like the Spring Breakers style and the jitteriness of that type of editing, this movie's for you. Apartment 212 is like Gremlins if you're staying in a motel. It's super weird, but the creature design is kind of interesting and fun. A Wrinkle in Time, I know, was a movie that was getting a lot of like hype. Like even before it was reviewed, everyone was like, oh no, we must love this movie because of what it represents. I really like Ava DuVernay. I think she is a super dope person. I just think that this movie is obviously for kids, but I never see that as like an excuse for it to still just be for kids, right? There's a difference between a kid's film and a family film. Always strive for a family film, not just a kid's film. It could be a little bit more. And I think that the best part of the movie is whenever she's able to make it personal, right? I know that it's a big budget type of thing, and that's kind of like where I feel Ava DuVernay doesn't do the best. I like it when she has those moments where like the girl is looking for her father and she just stops at one point and goes, but what if my dad don't want to see me again? That's the stuff I like. COD is pretty much Area 51, but in Britain, where journalists live in a house, and then like these two Mormon-looking dudes knock on the door, and this couple's like, oh, can we come in? And it turns out, yeah, they're freaking aliens. Like, you know this from the start of the movie, and it's an interesting home invasion film in a sense, because they're trying to escape, but they can't because the whole movie is timed around the kid coming home from school. I think it's pretty interesting. A lot of people won't get the answers that they want from it, but I think the experience and the sound design and the alien vomit was fun for what it was. Midnight Sun is that discount A Walk to Remember, right? You guys know I love A Walk to Remember. This movie can be a guilty pleasure if you like that stuff, but is also excruciatingly dumb. The ending. Arnold Schwarzenegger's kid is in this movie. It's about this girl who pretty much cannot go out in the sun. Does the complete opposite. The ending of this movie is like if you were to drop a lollipop in the dirt and like you picked it up and it was almost salvageable, but then you're like, nah, screw it, and you just rolled it in the dirt a bit more. Pacific Rim Uprising is a movie that, I mean, I'm just a little bit tired of these type of films. I wasn't a fan of the first one. This one was okay, I guess. You know, we've just been bombarded with all these like robots and kaiju type movies. And the thing is, I love both of them. I love both of them separately. I'm a big kaiju, Cloverfield, Godzilla fan. Maybe it's the fact that they got Idris and replaced him with KSI 2.0. I love Clint Eastwood and his son is mad attractive, but I ain't gonna lie, he acts like Plank from Ed, Edd n Eddy. And this movie continues that trend where they have a little girl who has to like go out and save the world. No, we have adults. To wrap up this segment, there's these two movies. Status update, I have not seen yet. I literally have it queued up because it's a movie about how this guy can update his status and those dreams will come true. Like, bro, just... I'm gonna make an let me explain. My brother's gonna make a let me explain on that. Demon House is another one. I got halfway through it. Some of you recommended this to me because of how bad it was. Why? Okay, so these are the ones that are a little bit above the stream it, right? Like, you can actually leave your house and go to the red box. Maybe if you got a discount code, you go and you use it for some of these. There was a couple of Christian films that came out. Paul, Apostle of Christ, I did not see, but I would like to mention that Jim Caviezel is going to be reprising his role in Passion of the Christ 2.0, which supposedly doesn't even take place after he comes back. It's going to be called, like, the Resurrection of the Christ. And they're talking about it being this trippy, like, in the future in another dimension. I am so hyped for it because some of you don't know, Passion of the Christ is one of my favorite religious films because it's practically Dawn of Justice, but with even more Jesus allegories. I Can Only Imagine, however, is another one that's based off of a true story. And for those of you who don't know the band Mercy Me, they pretty much had this huge song called I Can Only Imagine, and that's what the story is about. And I like it when Christian movies focus on a true story. You know, they don't fabricate something or do something that kind of, you know, if you're talking about God's power, it's cool to actually see a story that literally shows that. And I think that this movie does it in a pretty good way. It is more of a rent it for me, and that's specifically because I'm not a fan of having like a 35-year-old then also play an 18-year-old in the same movie. That I can't imagine that. Acrimony is the Tyler Perry movie where Taraji P. Henson just goes completely insane and crazy, and I'm not gonna lie, this is complete garbage. I'm almost not even gonna recommend this. This is the one that you get when you have the coupon code for Redbox that you go out and see, because it's like eating a bucket of ice cream after all eating a bucket of fried food. I Kill Giants, for me, is practically a Monster Calls. If you've seen a Monster Calls, this is that movie, but with the producers of Harry Potter in it. It's this girl who pretty much fights monsters in her imagination. I think the casting between the sisters was fantastic, very spot on. The girl's very annoying though, so it's like you can't even pity her when she's like getting bullied and stuff because she herself is kind of a bully. And I'm just surprised that this got released on VOD considering that the production value is fantastic. So I figured they could have maybe done something because it's also a graphic novel and people like that, but A Monster Calls is better in my opinion. Roxanne holds a little bit of a special place in my heart because it just came out on Netflix, but this was actually the first movie I ever saw at Sundance when I went 2 years ago. It was the first movie I ever saw, and it's about the rapper Roxanne, and it's her life story. Sometimes I wonder when a documentary can tell a real life story better than a biopic. And I'm kind of like in the middle between this. Like, I think the performances are great. I think the way it tells the story is great. Mahershala Ali is always above great. But there are bits here and there where you kind of gets a little bit dull, and you kind of want to focus a bit more on the music because that's kind of like the intrigue there. You want to see how she uses her experiences within her lyrics and what she goes through. But I mean, I'm always a fan when you put a little Nas bit in there. The Scent of Rain and Lightning is based off of a book, and it's like this mystery thriller of this girl trying to figure out who killed her mom, her parents, what happened to them, that whole scenario. And it's got Micah Monroe, who I think she's fantastic. Like, she's pretty looking because she reminds me of another Mia Malkova. And the thing with her is that she really is the one who carries this movie. I've been a fan of her since The Guest. I know she's not like the most profound actress in the world, but she just visually, I think, is a great actress. And this is a pretty decent movie. As it leads up, it's kind of a little bit more of a slow burn. Like, you have to sit through it until you finally get those revelations at the end. But if you're curious and watching a very slow-paced, slow-boiled thriller, then I would say this one's for you. Another one that I saw was a movie called Tilt. This is a psychological thriller of this guy who makes documentaries. And he makes these documentaries, but he's also freaking insane. My biggest gripe with the movie is that it like literally steals Sicario's steam. You know, this one right here. Not a big fan of that, but at the same time, it is a very interesting look at this guy like just slowly becoming crazy as you realize an incident in his past. It's a very slow burn, and it's one of those that as I was talking to it with my girlfriend, she noticed some things I didn't, and for that alone, you know, I'm always a big fan that even if I don't get blown away by a movie, if I miss something, I'd be like, well, I didn't notice that one. I know a lot of people don't like the whole gun talk scenario thing, and I know that a lot of people hated this movie before it came out because they're like, oh, it's pro-gun. And they literally went to go see another movie that also had guns. I don't know, that confused me. But this movie is a remake of what I consider one of the classic franchises with Charles Bronson. I ain't saying it's touching that at all, but Eli Roth did this one, and it's practically, you know, Bruce Willis playing Unbreakable 2.0 right before, you know, get you a little taste before Glass comes out, and his family gets messed with, so he goes out and, you know, he becomes a vigilante. It was fun for what it was. People bagged on this movie because I found this interesting, right? So this is a movie where Jared Leto pretty much plays an outsider, right? And people were complaining, they're like, oh, we don't like Jared Leto. He barely speaks in this movie, so maybe that's why he was bearable, but at the same time, a lot of people were complaining about the style of the movie, like saying that it doesn't represent the Yakuza clan, like, to a T. But what I found interesting is that this takes place, like, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, like, years ago, and people were comparing it to now. So like there was this article, it was like, oh, people don't wear these type of suits, they wear like sneakers. It's like, bro, you can't compare 2014 Yakuza members to the OGs. For me, I saw it in the realm, and I'm not quality wise, but in the way that mobsters, Italian mobsters get fantasized, the way that cartels get fantasized, and having this whole like, you know, organized crime, these people who are literally criminals, they break the rules, but yet they have their own rules in their society. And I thought that was interesting. I thought Tomb Raider looked great. I know that Alicia Vikander pretty much is like Rugrat grunting throughout the entire movie, and nothing's ever going to replace the video games, right? Like, I made a video on that as well. Nothing can ever replace the experience of actually playing the game, right? Every time you think Alicia Vikander's gonna die, she ain't gonna die. One, it's Alicia Vikander. Two, there's 40 minutes left in this movie. But even though I think she fits the role, and I think she looks fantastic with the braids and the guns and all that, the whole aspect of raiding the tomb was probably the worst part of the movie. And again, you got like 3 games that are coming out. The third one's coming out. Just go play the games instead. I know that a lot of people like hated this movie. It is way too long, even though I do feel that a lot of the meandering scenes do at a certain point pay off. This is the movie where Jennifer Lawrence pretty much is a Russian spy, even though she's this famous ballerina. I know some people went into it because they were very curious to see her play her version of Black Widow. Some people went in it because they can legally see the fappening happen in the movie. I liked the third act of the movie. I'll give it that. I liked the third act of the movie and the way that things get resolved, even though the movie does drag a lot. A lot. Let love explode and bring the... I made a video recently on this one, and again, I'm not putting it so high on the list. Again, these are just all my recommendations. You can mesh them up, put one over the other. Whichever one intrigues you, go for it. Gods Undead 3 surprised me, right? Maybe this is doing the exact thing that I just said about the Sherlock Gnomes movie, where it baited me, and I'm giving it a higher thing just because I was surprised by it. My expectations were so low. But the message was a lot better. That their filmmaking, literally with the cameras and the actors that they're getting, is increasing, and I appreciate that. I did have a comment of someone asking me, or calling me out saying that I'm only liking the movie because I agree with the message and that kind of makes me biased. No, the themes of a movie and how they're related in a film can be objectively viewed to study a film and whether it's good or not. This is the one, if you don't know the franchise, it's where Christians pretty much always complain they're being persecuted. And in the third one, they finally go, maybe we're the ones who are making a lot of the noise and we have a persecution complex. They finally did it in the third one. So everyone pretty much has that like fear of being in a car accident and then like you don't know what to do with the body. Especially, I'm not saying that I've ever been in that situation, but you may have had like a glass of Chardonnay or two, and now you're dealing with this body over here, maybe dead, maybe not. And the craziest thing is, what if this person is connected to you in a way that you don't even realize? I think this is a pretty interesting movie, even though it ends up becoming like a home invasion type of thing, because it starts taking place in the house, and other characters come into play that are connected to that body that they ran over, and even relatives come into play with that. And while it does have many moments where the characters are making decisions where you're like, stop doing that, it leads to a climax. It has an ending where it is the worst possible scenario, right? Like this is the worst place you can be at. It is depressing as can be. And at the same time is the best case scenario.
You will not take me down! I will not be served!
Death.Stalin came highly recommended to me because people were like, oh, it's got that little Quentin Tarantino dialogue quips. And well, yeah, the whole thing is about these like buffoons, I would call them, in the government who are trying to stage Stalin's death. The dialogue is good. For me, it's never great. It's like a game of tennis or a game of pong where they go back and forth, and it's entertaining because they're keeping it up, back and forth, but they're never doing like this crazy move. There was never that crazy line or conversation that made me go, whoa, this is incredible. The only time that they had me doing that was when I realized 30 minutes into the movie that this dude was Steve Buscemi. Now we got one that's super hot and loaded here, Ready Player One. I know that a lot of people did not like this movie. Other people way adored this movie. I made a video on nostalgia. For me, it's a kid's movie. I don't get what and it's fine, don't get me wrong, right? But the whole Hunger Games era, all that stuff, where it's like kids doing all the fighting and the adults were like, I don't know where, they're acting like buffoons. I never read the book because I got really bored with it. I don't hate this movie at all. I have it higher on the list over here. It's literally my second of this segment right here. But at a certain point, I was just like, these references are cool. But this movie's making some dumb decisions. One, this chick saying that, oh no, you're not gonna like me because I'm ugly. Bro, you are as hot as can be. You can have that birthmark all over your face. I'm asking you out. Having an 11-year-old, and again, these are like teenagers who are fighting for like the right of the internet world. How? And the corporation that they have is going down as one of the dumbest corporations. This is supposed to be this massive Apple-like corporation that can control a bunch of things, and they're trying to figure out how to take over the Oasis. And yet they got people walking in and out of their corporation like nothing. I'm talking like, the one thing that I thought was funny is that this corporation pretty much hires people to whore out and study pop culture in order to be able to use it for monetary gain. So they're practically Looper and Watch Mojo. To wrap up this segment is a movie called A Sack of Marbles, which I'm not going to pronounce. It's a foreign film. I'm not going to pronounce the original name because I won't get it. It's a Jewish film, right? Taking place during Nazi times. And I know that for a lot of people, because we get so many of them. I do get it. Trust me, I do understand that. And I'm watching it at the same time going, I mean, we've seen this before. It's not to downplay it at all, but, you know, you've seen it before. But at the same time, you got to look at it and be like, but objectively, say I haven't seen the other ones. This one tells the story pretty well. You're pretty much following these two kids and the hell that they go through as they have to go from place to place, getting confused, you know, between being Jewish and not. And there's this whole scene where the dad has to like teach them, like, you cannot break. You can never tell him you're Jewish. And he's slapping him. He's like, are you Jewish? No. I said, are you Jewish? No. I said, are you Jewish? No. And at a certain point, he finally has to hug the kid and be like, okay, you did good. Looks at the other kid and he's like, nah, bro, I ain't Jewish. I think it's a compelling story. And I think when you see the marbles from the title come into play, it's crushing. It's worth it. I give it a rent it. let me give you a quick recap on some of the TV shows before I get into my top 5 must-watch. And I know this is a longer video if you're watching at this point. Comment Space Jam down below, and I'll really appreciate that. But these are the TV stuff. People wanted me to separate the TV stuff a bit, so I figured I'd do it right before I get into my top 5 most watched. Collateral was a show that a lot of people were recommending to me, and I love the fact that it was a miniseries. It's about this pizza delivery boy that gets shot, and this whole conspiracy comes about it because it's taking place in the UK of whether this is a race issue or not, because the guy who was murdered was Muslim. And it's very xenophobic centric, and I wanted to be more into it. The message is fine and dandy, it's intriguing at a certain point, but it just dragged a bit for me, and I can't fully say what it was. I may flesh out my thoughts in another video, but there's just something about the way that it was still a limited series and somehow it found a way to drag. Wild Wild Country is another one that a lot of people recommended to me. I'm only 2 episodes in. I haven't even finished this one. I highly love the way it's edited and the style. I did read a little bit forward, considering it's a true story, and it's just the fact that it's, again, you guys know me. With series, it takes me a bit longer. I can watch a movie, but with a series, I gotta get fully invested into it, especially with it being super long. So if you got something to tell me about what I have to look forward to, I started reading through some articles on the guy, and I found that to be really interesting. But if there's something that ain't mentioned in the articles, definitely let me know down below, because it's a movie dealing with a sex cult, and at a certain point, from the first 2 episodes, I'm kind of on his side. Take Your Pills was a documentary that was released straight to Netflix, and I bring this up because, one, I made a video on documentaries on how they should be given love, but this one was interesting about how in the 70s drugs were used to escape, and now we're using drugs to come back. It's all about, like, I think it's Adderall, and how Adderall is practically meth, how we're consuming it like Pez dispensers, and I love the way that the documentary is edited. I love the visuals that they use. There's this one where a guy in a cubicle, and pretty much it's also the workload that we're given nowadays that causes you to seek out these drugs, and the way that they show the cubicle as being a prison, I think it's really interesting. I would say check it out. Love was another show that I was watching, and it actually wrapped up with season 3, and while I can't say it's like the greatest show, right, like I was never blown away by it, I saw all 3 seasons, and again, I will always recommend Easy before Love. Easy, definitely go watch that. That gets my high recommendation. But this was the one that I was always like, I need something to play in the background. I would play it, and I would do work, and I would get invested into it. I love Jillian Jacobs. I don't know how she ended up with J.J. Abrams Jr. over here, but these 2 characters were probably my favorites. I was really invested whenever we got to see this character's development. I wish we got a little bit more of her. I loved the girl who was the actress, and how she was struggling with her parents wanting her to do certain things, and she just wanted to be a kid. But in terms of like the final season in season 3, when the title finally comes into play, Phantom Threadish type way, I thought that was cool. The way that the final shot of the show, it was a nice little wrap up. On My Block is one that I made a video on, so I'll just direct you to that. Again, I thought it was an okay show. Some people actually took my recommendation, went to go see it, and I was like, okay, it's better than okay. I did my job. Again, I'm glad that I gave you a recommendation for something that you adored even more, but this is what I'm mentioning right here. I liked Everything Sucks. Some people did. I liked Everything Sucks. That just got canceled. So y'all better make sure and push this show, because I need to know what happens with that cliffhanger ending. Finally is Netflix's Rapture. I know HBO has a similar one, but I love these. I'm only halfway through. I'm on the TI episode, but pretty much it looks at a different rapper and in an hour just documents almost their entire life, or a big portion of their life, and what makes them who they are. The Nas one I thought was fantastic. Even the Logic one. I have my opinions on Logic, but I thought it was good. I found it funny that they pretty much just had to play his music, because his music has so much exposition, they could just play it over the documentary and it wraps up who he is. But definitely check that one out, and check out the HBO one, because they're both pretty dope. Finally, my must-watch. If you're still watching this, man, salute to you. All right, Thoroughbreds. It is not Heathers. I can't stress that enough. I have to argue for that, even though I like the movie. It is not Heathers. Saw this one back at Sundance 2 years ago, and I think it still has some of the best performances of the year. My thing with it, however, is that I feel it would work better as a play. And I felt that, and then found out that the writer-director actually wrote plays. He was a playwright, and the movie being like pretty much set in this mansion about these two girls who were friends long ago, and then they came back together. One like has no emotions, the other one has too many emotions. They come together and they kind of want to plot to kill a stepdad who ain't that good. I think it would make for a much better play experience than a movie experience, but the movie experience is still pretty dope that I have it in my top 5. Another one that I caught at Sundance 2 years ago was this one called The Vanishing of Sidney Hall. It was just called Sidney Hall back when I saw it, but it got picked up by A24. No theater release, straight to VOD, because people, I guess, I don't know, they critiqued it and they didn't like it. I always wonder if sometimes the critics are watching like 5 movies back to back. This is like that one in the middle, so they're tired, but they're looking more forward to that one, so they just dismiss this one. I mean, if you like A24 and you like my opinion, check this one out, because it's about a struggling writer who grows up and he pretty much becomes a recluse because of an incident that happens, and then you got this, what you think is a detective going out to look for him, and I thought it was a pretty interesting story, again with the biggest gripe being that if I don't like 35-year-olds playing 18-year-olds, I'm gonna say the same thing vice versa from my boy Logan. Unsane is another one, again, this segment being the one where I recommend, you go out to the theater and watch. I agree for all these 5, but Unsane was shot on an iPhone. I made the video on the iPhone thing, and I will say it may be better for you to just watch it on an iPhone because of the quality of it. The biggest gripes I give it is the fact that some of this stuff is shot like, I get that it's on an iPhone, but I'm talking like the actual cutting of it is shot like a student film. But still, one of the most surprising parts of the movie, without spoiling it, is that you go into it wondering how it's going to play as a psychological thriller, right? And it's one of those, at the moment you figure out which way it's going, you wonder, but is it going to be worth the rewatch? I think it is, mainly because of the whole stigma that they cover with mental health and how mental hospitals are run in the United States, and that gives you a whole nother reason to rewatch it and why I recommend it. Bit like maybe on your iPhone.
You're not into Abby, are you? She's cute, but she's just not really my type. Not because she's black. I love black women.
Love, Simon, I think, has one of the best 2/3 of a movie. I didn't read the book until after the film, and I may be making a video response to a video I already made, because that ending, it just isn't good. I've had discussions with it, other people just straight up arguments, and when you're trying to discuss with someone about something and they give you these 2 things, you're straight, you can't talk about it. 2, read the book, you idiot, even though the book is different. And then 3, can't we just have a cheesy teen ending for gay people? Of course. But bro, I'm with you. Is you with you? I want you to have a masterpiece. The first 2/3 of this movie was fantastic. That one scene that he's dealing with the friends and how there's this whole debate going between them about, you should have done this, no, you should have done that. He's like, but I'm dealing with this. It's intriguing to me. The scene with the father where you think that the father is like ashamed of him being gay, but it turns out he ain't ashamed of him being gay. He's ashamed that he never caught that his own son was gay. Like, there is some great stuff in this movie, and then that ending happens. And it's like, I made a video explaining why it didn't work from a film perspective, and people went bonkers. So I might be making a response to that, but again, for the people who don't like criticism out of a single point, I can criticize the movie, and this is my second favorite of March. So it shows you how much I thought that the 2/3 of it was really good, and then that ending just, I might make a response video to the video that I already made because of the comments to continue the discussion, but I'll say these 2 things. Did anyone else think that Jennifer Garner did not know that this was a gay movie? Like, they pretty much cast her in this movie and they didn't let her know. She's been making all those Christian movies, so yeah, I don't know where she stands on that. But imagine, like, at a certain point that scene happens where he reveals that he's gay. That's, like, her actual expression, because you did not see that coming. Because when she finally has a discussion with the kid, right, everyone's like, oh, it's so heartwarming. No, it's not. She literally says, I accept you. Then pets the guy in the head. Another one would be that the tagline in the movie is that everyone, deserves to be loved, yet they give this girl a 14th reason why not to be. Finally is Isle of Dogs. I love this movie. I have worked with Wes Anderson in the past, so I can say that, yes, I understand that he has his autorisms, his little things that may go a little bit overboard, but while I'm not a big fan of Fantastic Mr. Fox, maybe I'll rewatch it again, saw it a couple of years ago, it's a good movie. I always think that his craftsmanship, no one's arguing that. I love the animation to this, and I know that there's been this whole debate about Isle of Dogs because it takes place in Japan, and I made a video for it. I will be making another one about rap specifically and cultural appropriation and how this fits into it. The one thing that I'll say is that some people have wondered, if you moved it from another place, would it have mattered? Why did it have to be in Japan? And I'm like, because of the aesthetic, like literally the style that he made the movie in, of the way he superimposed text, all of that. I think he was paying tribute to it, and I adore this movie because I'm not even a fan of dogs. I know some of you are gonna hate me for that. I'm not a big fan of pets. This one almost made me want a dog. The relationship between the kid Atari and Chief, the voice acting between it, the way that it ends, and they finally, there's a specific line where he goes, have I been the runt of the group? And he goes, not anymore, because he finally found purpose. If you've seen the movie, if you've seen the animation, I think it's really good. And I'll just leave it at the point that I know there's a huge discussion going on. Some people have even said, if you like the movie, you're responsible for cultural appropriation. I'll just end this with a phrase you're going to continue hearing me say for a bit. Y'all are confusing cultural appropriation with cultural appreciation.